At what point did you decide you wanted to become a doctor and impact people's lives the way you do now?
So for me, I got very sick when I was 25. I think I probably got sick way before that. But then the symptoms got really intense when I was 25, 26. I went to see it was fatigue. I had no energy. Like I could literally sit down talking to you and I would be falling asleep. I'm only 25. I just got married, or 26. Just got married. I want to start a family. I don't want to take these medications that are going to ruin my life completely. And when I saw that transformation, it was no turning back for me. It was, I need to become a doctor. This is what I want to do. I want to help other people experience. How many minutes can we live without oxygen? 3, 5? Maybe. You can live without water easily for a week. You can live without food for 40 days. I mean, you lose weight, you might feel a little tired at the end, but you'll survive.
So welcome back to Born Superhuman. I'm very excited today to have Dr. Masha with us all the way from Spain. So I know we're on a different time zone, but you've got a fascinating background. Born Russian, moved to Canada, lived in Canada for many, many years, and then just upped and went on a whim, really. And you spent the last 16 years in Spain. But we're going to get into this because one of my things that I love about you is as much as you help everybody, you really specialize in women's health. And I think it's a real fascinating area to share with our listeners. But before we start, I want to find out, tell me about you as a young girl. What do you dream of? What was your passion?
Hi, Dan. Thank you for having me. I'm actually excited to have this conversation with you. We spoke. Before I move on, let me just quickly give you my hug from overseas, sort of. It's really nice talking to you because you always bring up such interesting topics that make me think, even after we finish the conversation. So I hope this conversation is going to be the same. Growing up in Russia was, I grew up in the Soviet Union, which was not Russia. I'll turn 50 this year. So I was born when there was Soviet Union, Cold War. Under no circumstance we knew that we could leave the country, and then everything opened up when I was about 12 or 13. And I moved to Canada first to study, and then I stayed there. Looking back, maybe because I was a child, I don't remember it being difficult or hard. I mean, I was a regular girl, went to school. I did a lot of theater. I grew up in a family of actors and theater workers on one side, at least. So I think this is where the love for podcasting, and being on stage comes from. So I did a lot of theater as a little girl, and I think I was just happy. But when I moved to Canada, I was happy as well. It was an absolutely new world to me, full of possibilities, quite different to what I was used to. But when you're young, you adapt like that.
Mm. So was Gorbachev in charge at the time when the wall came down, when you were able to travel, or was it before that?
So I think correct me if I'm wrong, I might be wrong with exact dates, but let's say he came to power in 1985, so I was 10 at a time. And then with perestroika and borders opening, that was probably around 1989 or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, that
so
explains
before
why.
Gorbachev, we had a pretty communistic state. Maybe not as bad as years before that, because things never break down in a second, although it feels like it. There's always circumstances and events leading up to that. And I think when I was growing up, we sort of felt that even though we were still the Soviet Union, but the state wasn't as strong and things were breaking down.
Yeah, it's fascinating to see, and what a great age to have lived such a special life. Because I know over in the old Soviet Union, acting, theatre, art was also very revered. When I look back at the Bolshoi Ballet and Baryshnikov and Nureyev and some of the great people, there was always that mystique from the West looking in and saying, you always developed and created such amazing talent. But that's why I'm going to guess you're so good on stage when you speak. I know it's one of those things I read about you, and speaking in the health industry as a naturopathic doctor is dynamic. But when you went to Canada and a new start, you went with your family, I'm going to presume you went there.
I had family there. So my cousins left when it was still very difficult to leave the Soviet Union. So they lived already in Toronto. And when I moved there, I wasn't going nowhere. So I had some family there that were established that helped me out at the beginning. I don't remember it being difficult. Moving countries sometimes can be quite an ordeal. And sometimes it's just an easy move. And it's quite difficult to predict because you can have two people in the same circumstance and just seeing it from a different glance, I guess.
Were you, when you went over to Canada to begin with, were you really like excited? Was there a nervousness, or were you just, because you're such a free spirit, did you just have this adventurous curiosity?
Well, I probably should say that Canada wasn't the first country I went to. So when I was 14, I visited the States, which that I think was quite an eye-opening experience because then I saw the Western world for the first time. I think I spent there a month with a group of students. In California, San Diego. So, can you imagine going from Moscow to one of the most beautiful places in the US, right? So I didn't realize at first that not the United States is not like San Diego. It's very different, multicultural. So I thought that's what it was. Then I traveled to Australia at one point. I spent a couple of months there, but I sort of felt it's a very nice country, but I felt that it's so far away from everywhere else. So I didn't want to stay there. And then after that, I went to Canada. And of course, it was exciting. I spoke really good English, which I learned at school. So that helped a lot. Having family helped. And then making friends right away also helped. And Canadians are amazing people with such big hearts. And you come to Canada and people accept you right away and you feel very welcome. But of course, it was quite a change from communist state going to a country. Canada is the land of the free, or at least at the time, it very much felt like that.
So, what point then? Because I got a little transition I want to do, but before I get there, at what point did you decide you wanted to become a doctor and impact people's lives the way you do now?
It's quite an interesting story. People come to helping other people professions because either they've had an event in their life that impacted them so much that they want to help others, or because somebody they love dearly was suffering. And again, they feel like they want to impact humanity in a way of giving back. So for me, I got very sick when I was 25. I think I probably got sick way before that. But then the symptoms got really intense when I was 25, 26. I went to see it was fatigue. I had no energy. Like I could literally sit down talking to you and I would be falling asleep. And I'll just put my head on a desk and I'll just fall asleep for 15 minutes and then wake up and continue the conversation. This is how bad it got. And then I went to see a doctor. They ran a bunch of tests, diagnosed me with a bunch of medical conditions from autoimmune to hormonal issues to whatnot. Told me that there's not much they can do for me, but here's a list of medications to take. And apart from being fascinated by the encyclopedia of medicine that I had as a little child, with little fonts and describing all the diseases. I remember as a child, I loved reading that for some reason. So apart from that, and one of my grandmothers being a really good doctor, but she had no influence on me whatsoever. I had no connection to medicine. I grew up in a very artistic sort of family. Can you imagine? But I came home. We had some internet back then. That's like 25, 26 years ago. So I looked up the medications Or maybe I just looked, maybe I bought the medication and I read the little paper that comes with the medication. Anyways, I looked at the side effects and I thought, I'm only 25. I just got married, or 26. Just got married. I want to start a family. I don't want to take these medications that are going to ruin my life completely. And I remember that was a very difficult time for me, accepting the fact that at such a young age, being so sick. And most of the diseases, you can't cure them. So they're all chronic, or at least at the time I was told. So I remember soul searching, and then I thought, you know what, there should be another way. I just need to find it. And that's how it started. And I met some amazing, amazing doctors along the way. I was very lucky, who helped me really rebuild my health from being very sick to being healthy and vibrant. And when I saw that transformation, it was no turning back for me. It was, I need to become a doctor. This is what I want to do. I want to help other people experience this profound transformation of health. You know this, Dan, we talked about it because you yourself went through health challenges as well. It's possible to be happy when you're not well, but it's a limiting factor to so many things. And when you're young, it's really a limiting factor. So for me, the biggest limitation was I really wanted to become a mother. So that was my motivation and inspiration to get healthy at the beginning. And that's how it started. So being healthy is a gift, it's a blessing, but it's also something that we can achieve if we follow certain steps, which are more or less are universal. Like your program, Born SuperHuman, is based on pillars, right? And any person who wants to get healthy should really incorporate those pillars of health, maybe with some variations. Some people might need more movement, other people more sunshine. But overall, it works pretty well. So this is the story in a nutshell.
Yeah, it's fascinating. It's interesting when you talk about taking a look at that label and seeing the side effects. And if you hadn't have done that, and most people don't, because it's confusing. It's like going to a party and suddenly you're thrown all these names. You're like, I can't handle it. I'm out. But I was up in Vegas not too long ago watching a commercial on TV for drugs. And it was a 2-minute commercial where 40 seconds was about what the good is going to be. And the next minute 20 were all the side effects that we've been trained to not even listen to because they say it so fast. So what you're doing is I'm 100% behind what you're doing because we're made to heal. We're born to heal, but we have to have the right leaders. Like you said, you had these incredible doctors that you met that showed you the way. And there's millions and millions of people around the world that just need a helping hand. And I love your comment. You can still be happy, ill, but it has limiting factors you can't overcome. So beautiful. So you became known as the expert. I mean, we're talking globally here for hyperbaric oxygen therapy. So I'd love you to start. How did you get into it? What was the discovery? How does it work? And then what are the results that you've seen?
So let me start by defining what does getting healthy mean. And you'll see in a moment where I'm going with this. Being healthy is never a destination. It's a process. It took me many years to understand. I thought you're going from being not healthy to being healthy. And then you're healthy, and then you're living your life healthy. No, it's not like that. You are getting healthier all your life. This is a lifelong journey, a lifelong process to become healthy. So as you can imagine, when I started, first I thought, okay, it's going to be 5 months, 6 months, 2 years, I'll get better. But then the more I learned, and especially in naturopathic school, because you learn so many different approaches, modalities, different things, you realize that there is actually no ceiling to that because you can keep improving your health. First, it's physical, then emotional, then spiritual, and so on. So in my quest, I was always searching for these new modalities, new therapies, new things that I could incorporate first for my own health, and then when I became a doctor to help other people. And at one of the conferences that I attended, which I'm not going to say which conference it was because it was boring. It was quite a boring conference. Yet, in the hallway, there were a hyperbaric chamber company that was exhibiting that brought hyperbaric chambers from the US, and the conference was in Europe at a time. And because the talks maybe were not as interesting, I spent a lot of time in the hallway talking to the guys with hyperbaric chambers. And I saw this was the first time I saw it. Back when I was in a naturopathic school, I don't think we got even an hour on hyperbaric medicine. Hyperbaric medicine back then was more of a diving medicine extension, not as popular as it is right now. So long story short, we're talking, they brought the studies. Of course, I tried a hyperbaric session, and then something miraculous, we can say, happened. So one of the conditions that I have is psoriasis. This is an autoimmune skin condition that affects the skin. And people who have it, they'll have those patches on the skin. And through my whole naturopathic natural medicine journey, no matter how hard I tried, I've always had 2 or 3 patches left. Of course, not my full body covered, but 2 or 3 were always there. So I'm trying hyperbarics. I did it the first day. I did a couple of sessions the second day, then the third day. And then I look at one of the patches or where it was supposed to be, and it's gone. And I couldn't believe my eyes. I've tried everything under the sun. Well, maybe not the stem cell therapy back then, and not the peptides because they were not available. We're talking many years ago. But for something so profoundly affect a disease that wasn't going away despite anything else that I did. And I got really interested. And back then, we didn't have a lot of information. So right now, for example, I teach a hyperbaric course. It's a 4-day course where practitioners can come and learn everything there is to learn about hyperbaric therapy, or at least enough so they can start offering it to their clients. Back then, we didn't have such thing. So I started PubMed research, trying to find other practitioners who do that, phoning different doctors, getting in touch with them, discussing clients. And then I started to try it on different people, mostly my clients, seeing results, documenting them. But still, I should say, beginning, I felt very isolated in what I did. Because the reaction was, you talk about hyperbaric chamber and people say, hyperbolic, what is it? And then be like, oh, Michael Jackson sleeps in one. So this was the only association that people got. That's how unusual and not widely used hyperbarics was. That's probably 15 years ago. But now it's rapidly developing, of course, and it's everywhere, and a lot of people know what it is. Dan, do you think we should maybe still say what is hyperbaric therapy?
Yeah, I mean, it's sad because, again, when I speak in the biohacking world or the health world, I think everybody knows what we already know. And yet, I would say still probably 98% of the world have no idea what hyperbaric therapy really is. I knew it from being a scuba diver and, having people, friends of mine that worked at the deep sea to, adjust their body back again. But I think it's fascinating because the better we know in my pillars, oxygen is the #1 need for our body to function. And here's the opportunity to get the greatest amount of oxygen results in an environment that's controlled that we can actually allow ourselves to heal. So how does hyperbaric therapy actually work? Tell me the process.
So first, let's define it. Hyperbaric. Hyper stands for increased and baric stands for pressure. So it's a therapy of increased pressure. How can we get increased pressure? We can do it inside a special vessel, which is called a hyperbaric chamber. Another way to get under increased pressure is diving. That's why hyperbarics has its origins and roots in diving medicine. So people lay down inside, or now they're sitting up hyperbaric chambers. They're inside a hyperbaric chamber where the pressure is created with the air or oxygen that's pumped inside. And that pressure has the medicinal therapeutic effect on the body. How does it work? Well, under the law of physics, we know that gases dissolve in liquid. Think about a water bottle, the soda bottle. We call it sparkling water in Spain or Europe. So all the gas bubbles are inside the solution because it's under pressure when it's closed. Once you open the water bottle, these bubbles start to come out. Same happens to oxygen in the body under pressure. We're in a hyperbaric chamber, we're under pressure. Oxygen will be in solution inside our blood and it will get to the cells. When we get out of the chamber, oxygen comes out and we breathe it out. This, unless we used it. This is how it works. Now, oxygen, it's number one of your pillars. Why? Because how many minutes can we live without oxygen? 3, 5, maybe. You can live without water easily for a week. You can live without food for 40 days. I mean, you'll lose weight, you might feel a little tired at the end, but you'll survive. But oxygen is absolutely needed every second for every single cell in the body. Brain consumes more oxygen than other parts, but every cell needs it. We produce energy from oxygen. Therefore, if there's no oxygen, there's no life. People are often hypoxic. What it means, people lack oxygen and then they get sick because of it. And you know, one of the easy ways to check is cold hands and feet. Why are the hands and feet cold in a person? Because there's lack of circulation. If there is lack of circulation, there is lack of oxygen delivery. Then there is hypoxia. Once there is hypoxia, the disease will start to develop. Low blood pressure is another sign of people not getting enough oxygen. You know how many times I hear from my patients, so they come in for their first visit. It's an online visit, so I cannot take their blood pressure. I ask them about their blood pressure, and they'll say, oh, I'm normal. I'm a little bit on the lower side. And I ask, what do you mean? Can you give me the exact numbers? And they'll say, 90/60. This is super low. Anything, if you're below 120/80, you are hypoxic. Here you are, you're not getting enough oxygen. You're still getting oxygen to sustain life, but not enough to be in your optimal health. There are many reasons for it. We're not going to go into them for the purpose of the podcast. However, hyperbaric is a therapy that gives people enough oxygen where they lack it, so they will correct that deficiency. Same way, someone's deficient in vitamin D. What do we tell them to do? Spend time outside or take vitamin D supplement to correct the deficiency. Oxygen is a nutrient. We need to correct the deficiency of oxygen if it exists, and people will instantaneously start to feel better. That's why anybody who goes in a hyperbaric chamber will feel better. They'll have more energy, better mood, better sleep that day. Why? Because we corrected the nutrient oxygen deficiency.
That's where the brilliance of the body can actually be a hindrance to us as well, because whatever we're suffering with, the body adapts to keep us feeling as if we're okay. And then we adapt in our mind thinking as, well, this is just what I live with. And yet, if we don't give the body the resources to overcome the challenges, when the body's being attacked from so many areas, again, I'll go back. Oxygen is the number one thing that helps our system grow stronger to be able to fight back against inflammation, disease, stress, oxidative stress to go. So I'm sure people think, and most people will have seen a hyperbaric chamber, and it's great that you brought up that now they have them where you can sit in them, you can put a table in them, because there was a lot of fear before of being restricted in that space and that fear and not knowing. What's it like being in a chamber for someone that's never been in and looks at it and goes, okay, this is a little claustrophobic?
It can feel to some people a little claustrophobic. That's absolutely legitimate concern. In fact, 2% of the world's population suffer from claustrophobia. Claustrophobia is the fear of closed spaces. Now, out of this 2%, most people, like 98 or 99% out of this 2%, can go in a hyperbaric chamber. Their first session might take a little longer, so they're comfortable being inside the chamber. But honestly, by session 3 or 4, you even stop noticing that you're in a chamber. This is a strange feeling. You go in because you know what to expect. You also realize that you can get out whenever you want. You just ask your technician to lower the pressure and you get out. And then it's quite spacious. Chambers that we have now, they're very comfortable and they're spacious. Even chambers that are made for one person and should only be used for one person at a time can actually host 2 people easily. This is how big they are.
Which brings me on to a point that I've read about, but I get conflicting information. We talk about atmospheric pressure, the APA, right? This in there. I see a lot of the consumer versions that are out there that also have good results, have a 1.3 APA. And you can tell me if I'm wrong because I'm not the educated here. But I've also heard you have to have at least a 2.0 APA to actually get the full benefit. Can you break that down for me? Because this is something I really would love to know myself.
So ATAs these are the units that we measure pressure in. We can also measure pressure in millimeters of mercury, in pounds per square inch. There are different units to measure the pressure. 2 ATA is actually higher end of pressures, but it doesn't mean that this is the only pressure that works. Now let's go back for a second and look at the history of hyperbaric medicine, which absolutely came from diving medicine. Diving medicine was there first, and then we developed a branch of hyperbaric. So in diving medicine, because of the nature of diving accidents, higher pressures were needed to help people recover from diving accidents. So something that is called decompression sickness or the bends, which is common in divers, requires a 2.8 atmospheric pressure to treat. Now, what people did, they took protocols that we had in diving medicine and they transferred them to hyperbaric medicine, thinking that if these pressures worked for divers, they should work for everybody else. Then we started to do research. And when I say we, community of hyperbaric physicians, enthusiasts, clinicians, patients, everybody who is connected to hyperbarics. So doing all these studies, those were done at different pressures to see which pressures work better, which pressures maybe not so good. It's been 30 years of extensive research. We have more questions than answers, but we know for a fact that different pressures work for different conditions in different situations. There's no one universal pressure that is good and another one that is bad. It's just John might need 1.3, Mary will need 1.5, Kate will need 1.7, and Dan will need 2.0. And it's the role of a hyperbaric practitioner to determine which pressure works best in the particular situation of a person. But having said that, there's still people out there, especially if they studied hyperbarics in the medical school 30 years ago as part of the diving medicine course, who still think that anything below 2.0 ATA is not therapeutic. This is not true because we have many good quality scientific studies proving the opposite. I'll give you an example. Somebody who has post-traumatic stress disorder, which is quite common, then I truly believe most of the people on the planet Earth have some form of post-traumatic stress disorder. These people will do worse at 2.0 ATA. They need much lower pressure to help them in their condition. People who have chronic disease that's been going on for many years might not tolerate higher pressure, and higher meaning 2.0 and higher, as well as they would milder pressures. People like myself with autoimmune conditions need milder pressures rather than higher pressures. So there is a lot of science and art in it. And, we can get different results for different people with different health goals.
How do you figure out then? Is there a physiological test that you do to find out, or is it more neurological to find out what the right pressure is for someone?
I wish we had a universal test that would help us determine that. A lot of it we do from history of a person. So we need to take a really good history, what they came with, what is their condition, what are their health goals. We have some sort of rules that we go by. Having said that, there are some doctors out there who constantly working on developing such a test. And I'll give you an example. Dr. Paul Harsh, who is one of the leading voices in the hyperbaric field, he mostly specializes in traumatic brain injury. He was on my podcast. We talked about the specifics of traumatic brain injury. Anyways, what he does, he scans people's brains when they're inside a hyperbaric chamber to see what effect certain pressure has, and he determines the right pressure for a particular person. It's a way to do it, but it's an expensive way. It requires you to have a scan that works in a hyperbaric chamber. So it's not reproducible, but it's doable. Now we are working on it as a community, developing all those tests. But as I said, we know more or less in which range the person should be. But to pinpoint exactly, not yet. I think genetic testing can also tell us a lot eventually, and we will learn, by comparing genetic testing to different effects of hyperbarics, maybe we'll be able, but that's a thing of a future rather than of a present.
I love your explanations because they're so clear and precise and simple to follow, which leads me to this question then that I hadn't thought of. Can somebody that needs a 2.0 still get a benefit from a 1.3? It's just going to be longer? Or if somebody needs a 1.3, and I know you explained the PTSD going on, but is there a danger that someone could also go in at too high a pressure and have a negative effect?
This is a great question. I feel like these are the questions that I usually get when I teach the course, or that I get, people send me emails with this question. So they're all really good questions. Generally, to answer the first part of the question, if we don't have access to 2.0 and we need 2.0, can we do 1.3 and get the same results? Probably not the same results. Doing 1.3 longer is not the same than doing 2.0. So time and pressure are two independent variables in the protocol. You cannot substitute pressure for time and vice versa. Time meaning the length of a session. Having said that, recent studies show more and more that those milder pressures can do a lot for most of the conditions. Before we used to, I'll give you an example, diabetic wounds. So hyperbaric is the first line therapy for diabetic wounds. Those are the wounds that are not healing because in people who suffer from diabetes, this is one of the complications they get. And as a consequence, they might get their limb amputated. So that's a very severe, dangerous situation. For the longest time, we were treating those diabetic wounds at high pressures. Now, clinics emerged which only had mild hyperbaric chambers. And let's say there was a person with a diabetic wound who only had access to that clinic, to that chamber. He couldn't travel 3 hours to get in a chamber that goes to higher pressure. So that person decided to try that milder pressure chamber, which was, let's say, 1.5 ATA. And he got better. We had one case report like that, then another one, then tens and hundreds and thousands. So it made us rethink. Still, the rule is higher pressure for a diabetic wound. Having said that, we're seeing in a clinical situation that milder pressures might also work because they worked for X number of people.
So I got a friend, Mike, who's a diabetic.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of friends, actually, sadly. that are suffering with that. When you talk about diabetic wounds helping, I mean, ultimately saving a limb, which is life changing just in itself. If someone's a diabetic and they started doing oxygen therapy, hyperbaric therapy, before there's even a wound, will that actually help prevent the wounds and can it help towards diabetes?
It absolutely can help. And I love how you think about it because prevention is the best cure. It's a lot easier to prevent something than to treat it once it's there. Now, the reason prevention is not done as much because people who write rules and regulations think that it's not cost effective, or it's quite difficult to persuade a person to do something that will prevent something that is not there yet, maybe in the future. But for people who do have diabetes, right? So they're at the higher risk of getting diabetic wounds eventually. Let's talk about these people, and there are many. Nowadays, it's an epidemic of diabetes or insulin resistance that leads to diabetes. Now, hyperbaric is known to help regulate blood sugar and blood lipids, and people do it together with dietary changes, with movement and exercise they're incorporating. They also use hyperbaric therapy to help them move from the point of being not metabolically flexible, because this is what diabetes is, into a situation when they become more metabolically flexible and being able to regulate their blood sugar a lot better. And if their blood sugar is regulated, then the risk of getting a diabetic wound goes down by a lot. So, of course, it can be used preventatively, and it probably should be used preventatively. And if you ask me, I should say anybody, even without a chronic disease, who's older than 40, should consider hyperbaric therapy as one of the therapies that they do. Think about it this way. You have oxygen, which is in the air that we breathe. You have red and infrared and all different lights in the sunlight that we get. And it's amazing if you go outside and you get oxygen and you get the light, but the nature of the life that we live, because it's so hectic, it's so stressful. We're inside. I mean, I'm sitting on this chair. Sometimes I feel like I'm glued to this chair all day long. I'm not even going outside to get more oxygen in, to get that sunlight. There are therapies now. There's this innovative technology that we can use that will correct those deficiencies. A huge philosophical question is whether or not that's the way to go, and we should actually be using technology instead of being outside. But this is the truth of this is the reality. I mean, we need to accept it, especially after COVID. We started to spend so much time inside, way more than 5 years ago. So we need to start thinking in a way, okay, I cannot spend 4 hours a day outside, but what I can do, I can incorporate hyperbaric therapy, I can incorporate red light therapy, and then hopefully I do some mindset switch change or something, and I will spend more time outside.
Yeah, it's like you said, our lifestyle has changed, but our body's needs haven't changed. So we have to find another way to give the body the need to function. I'm a big believer, but if we can do it naturally, do it naturally. But if we can't, still find a way to give it. But something I'd like to add on to you, and I'll never disagree with you because you are the expert. But when you said anybody over 40 should be using it, I also see a lot of people under 40 that, like you said, preventative. We got to look at lifestyle, health style. We know the youth are not moving as much as they used to when we're out running around playing. There's so many now sitting inside that we know is going to become an inflammation and disease in their life as they age quicker. So I really think anybody listening to this should look at their lifestyle and say, I need to start a couple of years before I'm going to have those effects. And sometimes it takes a parent to look at it and say, let's try. But I got another question. In fact, I should just go back on that one. Let's try for our child's health. I didn't finish the sentence. So a parent may look at a child and say, let's try for our child's health. because sometimes you get those cells functioning and flowing and the energy coming back, and the child wants to become more active because now they've got an excess and it doesn't feel normal sitting down. If somebody's listening to this, okay, I want to try this. Do you need to find a practitioner that has at least a 2.0 ATA to go to them? Because if somebody only has a 1.3 and you need more, or 1.5 chamber, should everyone be looking for at least a 2.0? And what should they be looking for in a practitioner to know it's the right person to go to?
So in the US, you need a prescription for hyperbaric. In Europe, you don't. So in the US, you will start with a practitioner to get a prescription. Now, you can absolutely ask that practitioner, in their opinion, what protocol, because pressure is part of a hyperbaric protocol. You should ask what protocol I will benefit from the most. And we can talk a little bit about what is hyperbaric protocol, but let's talk about what we look at. How do we decide on a protocol? So we look at the person and their current health status. And then we'll look, this is their point A. And then we'll look at their health goals. This is point B. And depending on point A and point B, we will develop and design a hyperbaric protocol. And let's talk about examples. So it's somebody who wants to use hyperbaric therapy for wellness. So they're point A, they're pretty healthy, or, relatively healthy, which means they don't have any diagnosis or any disease, but they want to do prevention. They want to feel better. They want to have a lot of energy. They want to have sharp mind. They want to wake up happy. We all want these things, right? We don't necessarily have these things all the time, but hyperbarics, because of the increased amount of oxygen, decreased inflammation, and so many other things that it does, can absolutely, so I just described point B, right? It can take you there. In this situation, we can choose different pressures, absolutely different protocols. 1.3 could be amazing protocol for a situation like that. Somebody might want to do 1.5 or 1.7 will probably normally decrease the number of sessions that they will do. On the other hand, we might get a patient or a client who has a chronic disease, and it's a different situation because their point A is different. They came with a condition. They want to improve their symptoms. Then you need a qualified practitioner, somebody who learned hyperbarics and understands how to design a protocol. This is why I talk, I talk every day, all day about the importance of getting the right education. Hyperbaric therapy is a therapy. People who prescribe it needs to be educated in it and understand how to put it together. Nowadays, there are many practitioners out there. It's not like there are 1, 2, 3, or 5. I offer consultations. My colleagues offer consultations. It's not impossible. It's very possible to find a hyperbaric practitioner who will put a hyperbaric protocol, and then you'll know, okay, I know that I'm doing something that makes sense because somebody who has education and experience looked at it and they put together a protocol. But by no means 2.0 is the only pressure.
So do you do courses? I know you teach practitioners, you teach clinics, you basically train the next experts. And there's a saying that I love, the greatest leaders are not the ones with the most followers, the greatest leaders are the ones that create the most leaders. And so you're a great leader here. But do you do anything for the general public? Do you have courses where they can come in and study? Like, let's just say there's a 78-year-old lady who's sitting here goes, I love Dr. Masha. I want to learn more because when we invest in our own health, like you did as a 25, 26-year-old young lady, I'm going to be better prepared to not rely on somebody else. Do you do those courses?
So not everybody needs a certification course, which is an in-person course, meaning people need to fly to Madrid. As I said, the world has changed. We do so many things online. I offer consultations to general public, somebody who just needs to look at their protocol or their situation or have some questions. I do consultations online. But I also have something which is absolutely limited to the amount of people that I take, is the online mentorship program, where a person comes in and in the series of 6 or 7 sessions, We cover all the basics of hyperbarics, but it's done one-on-one, and I answer very specific questions of that person. For example, I have a couple of clients that are with me all the time, but I try not to take more than that because it's just not possible to clone me, and have a lot of clients like that. But usually these are people who want to use hyperbarics at home, or maybe they have a small clinic and they need it for specific conditions. So they know that their clientele is people with traumatic brain injury, professional athletes, people who have chronic fatigue syndrome, maybe people with cancer or metabolic disease. And we focus heavily on these conditions during this mentorship program. And it works really well. And I wish I could do more of those. But as I said, I take 2 or 3 clients at a time, and there's usually a waiting list for these programs. But they're great because they're tailored. They're made specifically for this clinic. So we develop protocols, assessment tools. It's fun. I love it because I get to see patients of that clinic through that practitioner. I go over cases. I help them put together different programs. It's absolutely something that I enjoy very much.
Question just popped up for clarification. You said in America you have to have a prescription to have hyperbaric. Is that for insurance to pay for it? But if you wanted to just go and do it out of your own dollar, you can just go to a hyperbaric. I know there's one just down the road from me that I got some sessions lined up to. I didn't have a prescription to go there. Is that what you meant there? If anybody in America is listening to this?
But if you go to a facility like that in America, there's someone there who writes you a prescription. It's
Okay.
not for insurance to cover it. It's just because oxygen is a drug and it's available by prescription. If people who want to get a home hyperbaric unit in America they need to have a prescription for a home hyperbaric chamber. Now in Europe, we don't have that. And there are different regulations in different European countries. So we cannot generalize over the European Union. England have their sets of regulations. Anything below 2.0 is not even hyperbaric. Spain has its own rules. So it's not yet a very it's strictly regulated industry, but it's not universally regulated, which makes it a little, I think, confusing.
Yeah, because I'm thinking if I have a hyperbaric chamber, which is one of my goals to have in my own home, and then I bring a friend in and let them use it, theoretically, I could be liable for anything that goes wrong, correct?
Yes, even if they have a prescription.
Yeah.
That's why I think everybody needs to have some sort of education. Even if you bought a chamber for home use, at least get something, an hour, 2 hours from somebody who knows how to use it with all the safety precautions that need to be in place. Hyperbarics is extremely safe. It's healing. It changes people's lives. It changes health outcomes of people. I mean, you see such a profound transformation with hyperbaric, like with nothing else. Still, it's safe only when it's used safely. And used safely, meaning that there are certain rules that you need to follow. For different chambers, there are different rules. And I'll give you an example. Some chambers, you absolutely need to go inside in a cotton gown and bring nothing with you. Others, you can wear clothing and bring a book. So they're different, depending on the type of chamber that you got for your home use, will be different safety procedures.
No, it's brilliant. It's when I get mine, I know who I'm coming to get my training in. Because again, if you're going to do anything, and it's not inexpensive. I mean, those chambers can be very expensive, but if you're going to invest that much money, you might as well get the best results out of it. It's not just doing it. But I want to move on from here because you're so
Yes,
much
let's do it.
more than the hyperbaric therapy oxygen guru genius. There's so much more to you that sometimes gets missed because of your expertise or recognition. I know hormone therapy, reproductive therapy, or looking at those situations, weight loss. There's so many other things that you deal with. Let's go on to hormone therapy because I'm living with that with my girlfriend right now. And it's major. It's something that got ignored for so many years. And I'm having to learn this now that it was just dismissed as crazy women. I mean, that's just the reality of what it was because of the hormone change. It still has a negative connotation in some people's minds. Go into hormone therapy, educate me.
Okay, how to educate a man about female hormone situation? No, but it takes two people because you just mentioned my girlfriend, so it affects both of you. And hormonally, maybe we're a little more complicated than you guys in terms of how our hormones function. But men also go through andropause and might need hormone replacement therapy like women. I come from old school, old naturopathic school, and I always look at it from a standpoint that you can have two different scenarios in life. One is that whatever somebody is not feeling well, all the symptoms that they have, those symptoms can be absolutely corrected with all the natural interventions. Herbs, acupuncture, lifestyle. Lifestyle medicine is the number one medicine that exists. If you don't change your lifestyle, everything else will have only marginal effect on what you do, including hyperbaric therapy. Dan, hyperbarics is great, but if you don't change your lifestyle, I mean, you're always moving one step forward, two steps back. So there is one scenario when you can go with natural therapies, do the herbs, and absolutely smoothly move through the periods of hormonal fluctuations, whether it's puberty or menopause or something that women experience in between. And then there is second scenario for whatever reason. Maybe it's genetic. Maybe the lifestyle modifications will just take too long to take an effect while the woman is suffering. Where you're absolutely right is that for so many years, and especially if you look into the history of that, women were told that they were crazy and all that stuff. They were not allowed to go outside. A man could get a divorce legally from a woman who was going through menopause. Also, in older age, both men and women didn't live, not all of them lived till the age of menopause because the life expectancy was so much shorter. So all of a sudden, we're moving into the 20th century. The life expectancy is longer. We now have antibiotics. We're not dying from infections. And I mean, the medicine is amazing. So we can do so much. And a lot of women living till the age when they go through menopause. And just statistically, not all of these women will have a nice time going through menopause, going through hormonal changes. And this is where hormone replacement therapy can absolutely be a savior. And it can bring sanity back for that woman, for the whole family. They're different, again, different situations. Some women, maybe they do well emotionally, but then they're really prone to developing osteoporosis. And if you look at their family history, you'll see that their mother had osteoporosis, grandmother, maybe they had a fall and then they broke something pretty early, affected their quality of life. Do we want to get there? Alzheimer's, brain health is affected by our hormones. So there's so many indications and so many scenarios where hormone replacement therapy can work really well. But I think, you know what is happening now? People are always, it's everything or nothing. So beforehand, it was hormones are evil. People get cancer from hormones, don't use them. Now we're sort of turning it upside down, and it's becoming every single woman going through menopause needs hormone replacement therapy. I don't believe that. We're all different. We don't all need the same prescription for everything that is going to happen to us. It really needs to be decided on the individual basis. And another big part that we're missing as a society is that people look at hormone replacement therapy as a magic pill, like hyperbarics. I'll give you an example, and it happened to me. I mean, I've been in natural medicine world for 25 years, 15 years of hyperbaric. So recently, I've realized it that I was going through a period in my life when I was very busy work-wise, family-wise. And what I was doing, I was using hyperbarics to get sort of through the burnout that I was having. I was in the burnout situation, but to keep pushing, I was doing hyperbarics, methylene blue, red light therapy, a very strict diet, all to have more energy to work more. This is not right because I was missing the point of pillars of health, sleep, social connection, having life outside of work. It took me some time to realize that. So the same I feel is happening with hormones when instead of looking at how we eat and how we sleep and how we move and how much we work, actually, because now working from home and working online will work 12-hour days and it's becoming the new normal. Of course, it will affect how a woman feels during the menopause, Dan. It will affect anyone, but if you think about the body from the holistic point of view, from the Eastern sort of medicine point of view, there's a part of our body that's called adrenal glands.
Mm.
Have you heard about adrenal fatigue? So in Chinese medicine, adrenals and kidneys are the same sort of system. So in Chinese medicine, which I think is brilliant, it's been around for almost 3,000 years, and it's always right. It's the deficiency, it's the depletion of that kidneys that causes menopausal symptoms. So if you're running on your adrenals, not letting yourself rest, drinking alcohol, to relax in the evening, that will drain adrenals. Overtraining will drain adrenals. So a woman who spends 2 hours daily in the gym in her late 40s, maybe this is not leading to a good scenario with menopause. Then what we do, instead of looking at all of that and thinking, okay, I'm not doing this right, what can I change? I take my prescription pad and I'm like, estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, here's your hormone replacement prescription. And it will fix the symptoms, but it will not in the long run, in the big picture. This is not the harmony, it's a patch. And I think realizing that as a society, we still, haven't realized that because it doesn't fit into paradigm of let's be overachievers, you are expected, to deliver, you're expected to do that. And if you're not feeling well, here's your hormone replacement therapy. It could be absolutely needed and necessary,
Sure.
but let's change the lifestyle first.
I have to read it. This morning, I was out, I went and raced bikes this morning. I have a bike 6 a.m. on Thursday mornings. And I actually wrote to my mum, and that's why I'm going to actually just read it off my phone. This morning, I wrote this, which is why I love what you're saying. I used to think it was a badge of honor to say I am so busy, as if I was achieving greatness or better than those who are around me. Now I realize it was the worst thing to say and experience. I admire those who say they have time and living life with self-care and working to live, not living to work. And this is my goal, and happiness is my medicine. And so it's great that you just brought that up. So it just went to share it. But two things that I have, this is what I'm living through. The options for hormone therapy are either the creams that you put on that get absorbed into the skin, or the patches are the two options that I've heard of and seeing around. But also you're going to have to do this for the rest of your life. Is that true?
So when you stop, the symptoms might come back, and most likely they will come back. We don't have enough data to say that it will come back in everyone. But I think we need to accept the fact that not everyone can have a healthy sort of transition. Menopause is a transition. Let's not treat menopause as a disease. Okay, so people need medication for a disease. This is not a disease. This is a stage in life. And it brings with itself wisdom because brain ultimately changes through it. Now, if we need help because physical or emotional or mental symptoms are too much, we need help. Thanks God, now we have hormone replacement therapy. So it helps most people, but it doesn't mean that we shouldn't be looking at other things and changing lifestyle. Having said that, some women can taper it down eventually and not use it, but you get so used to the easiness that comes with using hormone replacement therapy that maybe you don't want to let go either. And maybe some of the symptoms do need lifelong treatment, like vaginal dryness is a huge symptom that's not being talked about that is easily solved with estrogen. Why not solve this problem so women don't suffer?
Yeah, I think it comes down to self-esteem, self-confidence, pride, so many things that as we age in life and society has told us that's just the way it is. And I see people diminish their own value and just drift away into the distance because they think it's just what it is and they can't make a difference. Should people be looking, because obviously got perimenopause into menopause, is there an age identifier that says go start looking now before you start suffering? And what action would you take in perimenopause compared to menopause itself?
So there's a Chinese saying that says, treat menopause in women when they're in their early 30s. And this is what it means. So in your early 30s, or not you, but a woman in her early 30s, she's not in menopause or perimenopause, most likely. But whatever she does there will affect how she feels when she is in perimenopause 10, 15 years later. So I think we should start in our 20s to really look after our adrenals, which means stress, sleep, what we eat, and overwork. There is a study that shows, and it's also a study that was done by Chinese medical doctors that shows that overworked women in their 30s have the worst menopausal symptoms. Dan, it's not a person with hormonal imbalance or I don't know, hormonal disease like polycystic ovarian disease or endometriosis that has it the worst. No, it's the woman who is overworked.
Mm.
So this is when we need to start. I think we need to start thinking about it from this point of view. Now, when you move into perimenopause, and I'm talking to women out there who are listening now, this is when you might start feeling the symptoms, and the symptoms might be so vague that you don't even think that you might be in perimenopause. Like you start forgetting things, or you all of a sudden maybe sweat a little too much, or in the second half of the cycle, you feel like there's not enough air, which is there's a very interesting symptom. So a lot of women exercise nowadays. And when you do the lower back exercises, so you usually face down. And in the second half of the cycle, face down, meaning almost not suffocating, but not having enough air. This is actually one of the symptoms that you might be entering perimenopause, which is so subtle, you don't even think about it. Or maybe being a little more emotional. There's so many things that hormones affect that actually anything can be attributed to that. And of course, first intervention, first thing to think about is the lifestyle change. How do I change my lifestyle so it becomes more yin in a sense, more feminine, more sort of flowy, more slow? How do I slow down without slowing down? This is very interesting concept. And then if the symptoms are too much, if they're not manageable with lifestyle modifications, there's some great herbal supplements that women can take. Then it's time to move in and consult with a practitioner who does hormone replacement therapy. In my opinion, should be like that.
Yeah, fantastic. I look at it again. I'm a big advocate for exercise. I grew up my whole life exercising. I was a head coach on the Olympic program. I saw the impact that physical health brings, and then taking the Total Balance Company and working with so many seniors and the impact of exercise. What you invest early pays off later. And as you had said earlier, people don't want to do that hyperbaric therapy oxygen until they're suffering, and yet preventative is so critical. And I think wrapping that up beautifully is if people invest in their future 10 years earlier, they'll have an easier, potentially, journey through the struggle to still feel that same value later in years as well.
100%. We need to start as early as possible, better when we're still children, you know? So but try telling it to your teenagers.
Have you written a book? Do you have a book out?
No, I don't.
You don't
I
have
know
time for it,
people
do you?
ask me. I should probably think about it.
Yeah, you got so much great knowledge. And I mean, I could keep talking to you for hours. I do want to talk to you about two other things. Methylene blue you brought up. There's a lot of promotion in the biohacking world that's spreading out into more of the general population about methylene blue, but there's also a pushback. And I don't know who's doing the pushback because we know there's always money involved on both sides. What's your experience with methylene blue? How does it work and what does it really do?
So my experience is very positive, both in myself and in my clients. I prescribe it lately or suggested a lot, and I'm watching the results, and the results are being reported, and I'm seeing really great results. And I'm not an early adopter. You know how they're early adopters, people who are like the majority, and then late adopters. I'm not an early adopter in anything. I like to sit back, watch, see what happens, and then maybe start using it. So it was the same with methylene blue. I watched it for quite some time. I read a lot of studies. I talked to other experts. This is one of the reasons I have a podcast, so I can, pick other people's minds, who know more than me. We had a great conversation with you, Dan. I learned so much. So always like that. So for methylene blue, I made an effort. And how it works, it's a dye. First, it was developed as a dye. So it dyes everything in this blue color, including your pee. So be prepared if you use methylene blue, your toilet will be stained in color blue, which is probably there's a way to clean it, with trying to figure it out. But apart from that, it's a great antimicrobial, and it was used as an anti-malarial drug, and it was used a lot before the antibiotics became common. Then with antibiotics, using antibiotics is a lot easier. So methylene blue was sort of forgotten. And but it was used again in World War I, I think with a lot of success, in a sense that it helped to get rid of many diseases. And its antimicrobial properties became evident during the COVID pandemic, when we have the studies that show that people who took methylene blue for other reasons during the time of COVID never got COVID. So it was preventative in them. People who got COVID and took methylene blue, they had much easier time with it. It affects our mitochondria. It affects how we produce energy. It's an electron donor in the electron transport chain in which oxygen goes in and the energy is produced. So it acts in the same part of mitochondria as oxygen, as hyperbaric oxygen therapy. These two therapies are synergistic. They work together. As a result, because it's in mitochondria where we produce energy, we get more energy from it. It's an antimicrobial, so it takes care of a lot of hidden infections in the body. It's great, in long COVID, Epstein-Barr, many chronic infectious processes that can be happening. Now, lately, everybody's talking how it stains brain blue and it stains internal organs blue and nobody should take it. I think one misconception out there is that people take it every day and they take it in higher doses. So methylene blue stays in the system. There's no need to take it every day. And taking it every day is overdoing it, in my opinion. Also, the dosage. Most people do really well from somewhere from 5 milligrams to 20 milligrams a day. Now, there are people out there who take a lot more than that. But there are always people like that. There are always people who will overdo anything and everything just to see what happens. And I think that's why it's getting this sort of bad fame a little bit, methylene blue, yet it can be a great synergistic tool. It gives a lot of mental clarity. I would normally take it when I teach, and I teach a 4-day course. I take it maybe 3 days out of 4 because it gives me a lot of stamina. It's very synergistic with fasting. You can take methylene blue fast and have a lot of energy and mental energy. which is very important. So to be concentrated, to have that concentration for many hours at a time, not just I'll concentrate for an hour, but I teach for 8 hours. So I need to be there for people for 8 hours. It's very helpful. There are contraindications. Everybody should read them. It's contraindicated with high doses SSRIs, which are serotonin inhibitors, antidepressants. We used to think that it's an absolute contraindication. Now we know it depends on the dosage. So somebody who is on SSRIs should consult practitioner whether or not they can take methylene blue.
Yeah, it's become so commercialized over here in America. Just literally buy it over the counter. And I know people are taking it every single day. I know RFK Jr. is a big proponent of methylene blue. Yeah, so fascinating information. Do you have a website that we can put down here that people can get more information? Do you recommend a certain brand of methylene blue that we could, again, put in here that people could research you and get it through you?
If somebody has a question, they can leave a comment under this interview, and we'll give them the link where this can be found. Absolutely, because methylene blue, a lot of it is the quality of the supplement. So there's one specific one that I like that is American brand that I use. So we'll bring it from the States, although we can get methylene blue here in Europe, but quality really matters. It has to be pharmaceutical grade, and it has to be, apart from that, it has to be a good quality methylene blue. It's not the only company that produces it. So people can search and find. Of course, anything that you take, especially that you take inside, needs to be good quality, in my opinion, any supplement.
Yeah, that's what I found. That's, again, back in the biohacking world, there's 20% that's great, in my opinion, and 80% that is everyone ripping off to try and make money and doesn't have the same protocols or level of quality that the originals were, or maybe someone has improved it and increased the value of the supplement. But you got to be so careful what you're taking these days, because I see it big time with hydrogen water, as you know, we spoke about that. And I know you've spoken with Matteo, and it's fascinating what people would jump on for money, but actually kill people along the way. And you may have a week of some sort of belief it's working for you, and then suddenly your body goes down. So I really appreciate that. Last one I want to go on to today, and I'm sure if anybody wants me to bring Dr. Masha back on, because I think we could talk all day. You talk about an 8 hour session. We could do an 8 hour session right now. Get the methylene blue out. But reproductive system, that is such a huge impact on a woman or a family's life, a husband and woman that has dreams. And yet we know society, with the push that's going on in the change of lifestyle, it is getting harder for us to be in a peaceful place to actually let our body work properly. What do you do with the reproductive therapy and guidance that you give?
You're so right. It's such an issue nowadays, as a consequence of so many factors. But you see more and more couples suffering from infertility. So reproductive health is not just infertility, but infertility is a big one. And people a lot of times they seek help because of the infertility issues. So a woman might put up with maybe her periods are not regular, maybe she has pain before her period or during her period. She'll live with it. She'll take painkillers. But with infertility, you cannot just live with it. If that's an issue, then people will start seeking help, information, and it's getting worse in a sense that more and more people are affected, and I think even more people will be affected because of the toxins exposure that we have. Mostly, that absolutely, if toxins affect neurological health, they'll affect reproductive health. And I do believe that women, men, especially men, by the way, because men suffer in silence. Women are a little more outgoing. They go to Facebook groups, they sort of seek help and support from one another. And it's devastating. Infertility is one of the most difficult diagnoses. And I'm talking firsthand, suffering from infertility myself, and also having a lot of infertility patients. So I can relate and understand. So first, there needs to be support. because it's a very sensitive issue for most. And then we have a lot of tools. So yes, things are getting worse in a sense that there's so many toxins, we're all affected, and more people have subnormal fertility, which means they're not getting pregnant in the first year of trying, but maybe with some help they will. We also have so many more tools than people had, from diagnosis, from getting the right diagnosis to getting treatments. And this is, by the way, where hyperbaric therapy can be very helpful. And this is what people don't know. So they don't seek hyperbarics unless they read on a forum or they heard from another person who did a series of hyperbarics. Now, I'll tell you a quick story. So I have this clinic that I coach, and they want to have an anti-aging program in their clinic. It's a hyperbaric clinic. So we spent 2 months putting together a cutting-edge anti-aging program for their clients. And then the man who is a chief doctor approaches me and he asks me, he says, "Can you share with us infertility protocols, please?" And he explains the situation. One of his technicians has had infertility for years. So they've done several rounds of IVF. I mean, they did everything. Nothing was helping. And that technician at his clinic was also a personal friend. So he was asking for a friend. I said, okay, of course. Infertility protocols, hyperbaric protocols, they're pretty standard and they're pretty easy. And he could do it because he had a chamber that could accommodate for the pressures needed. So they did a series, and we're putting together the anti-aging with all the fancy blood tests and biological aging. We invested 2 months of full-time work on my end, on their end. So technician does the protocol and gets pregnant. And I don't remember, that was 15 years of infertility, but something like astronomical number. So they've even stopped hoping at that point. So she gets pregnant and she gets very excited. Now, because she's been in the infertility world for so long, she starts to share her story. And this man, instead of all these anti-aging clients, he started getting an influx, a lot of people who came for infertility. So we changed, we changed the shoes on our way. And he said, let's create this whole infertility support that we can give women and men, and they're doing so well. The clinic is doing so well because clients are getting results. This is how effective hyperbaric oxygen can be for infertility. And it's not just hyperbarics. Of course, they're combining with IVs. They also have red light. So they had the setup of equipment for it as anti-aging tools. But it worked out the other way. And I love that story. By the way, she delivered a baby boy because that was last year. So she's already a mother and her partner is a father. And it's a happy story.
How fantastic. Because I know as humans, we're brought up. Part of our development in life is the biological reproduction. And I've never had children. I've got a nonprofit organization for kids that I've had thousands go through, which was my sister there. But there's always a part of you, especially if you really want children, that feels that you've underachieved in life itself. So fantastic what you're doing. I also think it highlights here, Dr. Masha, that when you take care of your health, your whole body can begin to flourish because you bring up red light therapy. You've got the hyperbaric, you've got the IVs, all these different things. All they're really doing is replenishing the body back to its best possible healthy state, which is so dynamic. If anybody would like me to get Dr. Masha back on here, please reach out, because I think this has been the most educational podcast I've ever done. It's because it's so clear. It's not about a product. It's about life. It's about health. And you explain it so beautifully simple. To finish up, I always ask this question. What is the one thing that you would like the world to know from you that would be part of your legacy in a message?
Oof, that's a big one. I don't know if I'm ready for that, but I guess lifestyle is huge. If you change your lifestyle, you can become completely different person. You can absolutely become who you want to become because you'll have a clear mind, you have a body that is capable of doing things. Your mental health will improve, and all of a sudden you will see the purpose and the mission, because this is what I think makes a person happy, is to discover their purpose and mission in life, and keep moving into that direction. But we underestimate how much our health affects that. We think we separate the mind, the body, the sleep. It's all like different categories. We might be thinking about our purpose and not finding it. And the problem might be in the gut, because dysregulated gastrointestinal health will affect mental health, and we might not see the purpose out there. This is how much it is connected. And my biggest wish for everybody is just, to stop, to slow down, look at their lifestyle and see where they can improve, and do something every day, see value in it. Because it might not be a goal in itself to have a healthy body, but having a healthy body and healthy mind and healthy emotional state will just open so many doors. And I want people to open these doors, because this is the life we came to live, and it's worth living. But to live it fully, we have to use the senses, the brain cells, everything that we've got that is muffled from not so healthy lifestyle choices. This is how important it is. And if people are healthier, then I can tell you 100% this world will become a better place. Because healthy people are happier, they're kinder to each other, normally. So we might transform this world by transforming one life at a time, moving from not so healthy state to healthier.
That's beautiful, Dr. Marsha. You are a superstar. Thank you so much for giving us your time today, your information. We'll drop all the links in here for people to search more about your brilliance and your education and help and support. And what I can say is, thank goodness a young lady at the age of 25 went through a ton of suffering, because you gift wrapped it beautifully to make it the mission to help so many other people. Thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
spending your time with us today. And I look forward to talking to you again, I'm sure, quite a lot.
Me too. I appreciate it.
Thank you.